The Little Prince, written and illustrated by Anthony and translated from the French by Catherine Wood. Once, when I was 6 years old, I saw a magnificent picture in a book called True Story from Nature about the primeval forest. It was a picture of a boa constrictor in the act of swallowing an animal. Here is a copy of the drawing. In the book, it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing it. After that, they are not able to move, and they sleep through the 6 months that they need for digestion. I pondered deeply then over the adventure of the jungle, and after some work with a colored pencil, I succeeded in making my first drawing. My drawing number one, it looked something like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them whether the drawing frightened them. But they answered, frightened? Why should anyone be frightened by a hat? My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. But since the grown-ups were not able to understand it, I made another drawing. I drew the inside of a boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could see it clearly. They always need to have things explained. My drawing number two looked like this. The grown-up's response this time was to advise me to lay aside my drawings of a boa constrictors, whether from the inside or the outside, and devote myself instead to geography, history, arithmetics, and grammar. That is why, at the age of 6, I gave up the what might have been a magnificent career as a painter. I had been disheartened by the failure of my drawing number one and my drawing number two. Grown-ups are never understand anything by themselves. And it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things for them. So then I chose another profession. I learned how to pilot airplanes. I have flown a little over all part of the world, and it is true that geography has been very useful to me. At a glance, I can distinguish China from Arizona. If one gets lost in the night, such knowledge is valuable. In the course of this life, I have had a great many encounters with a great many people who have been concerned with matters of consequence. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have seen them intimately close at hand, and that hasn't much improved my opinion of them. Whether I met one of them who seems to me at all clear-sighted, I try to experiment of showing him my drawing number one, which I have always kept. I would try to find out so if he was a person of true understanding. But whoever it was, he or she would always say, there is a hat. Then I would never talk that person about boa constrictions or primeval forests or stars. I would bring myself down to his level. I would ask to him about bridge or golf or politics or neckties, and the grown-ups will be pleased, greatly pleased, to have met such a sensible man. So I lived my life alone without anyone that I could really talk to until I had an accident with my plane in the desert of Sahara 6 years ago. Something was broken in my engine, and as I had with me neither a mechanic nor any passengers, I set myself to attempt the difficult repairs all alone. It was a question of life or death for me. Had scarcely enough drinking water to last a week. The first night, then, I went to sleep under the sand, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was more isolated than a shipwrecked sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. Thus, you can imagine my amazement at sunrise, when I was awaked by an old little voice. It said, "If you please draw me a ship." What? Draw me a ship? I jumped to my feet, completely thunderstruck, blinked my eye hard. I looked carefully all around me, and I saw a most extraordinary small person who stood there examining me with great seriousness. Here you might see the best portrait that, later, I was able to make of him, but my drawing is certainly very much less charming than its model. That, however, is not my fault. The grown-ups discouraged me in my painter career when I was 6 years old, and I never learned how to draw anything except boas from the outside and boas from the inside. Now I stared at this sudden apparition with my eyes fairly starting out of my head in astonishment. Remember, I had crashed in the desert 1,000 miles from any habitated region. And yet this little man seems neither to be straying uncertainly among the sand, nor to be fading from fatigue or hunger or thirst or fear. Nothing about him gave any suggestion of a child lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. When at last I was able to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" And his answer he repeated, very slowly, as if he were speaking of a matter of great consequence. "If you please show me a sheep."